was the highest valued wide receiver, and I think that he was probably in the 20-rank bracket by the end of the day.
And the only reason why is because they were playing the ex-coach of his for the last 5 years or whatever.
Yeah.
Watch what he does this week. So
he looked pretty good.
It's a combination of that, because if you can afford him and the matchup's good and there's not that outside variable of, well, that's his old team, of course they're going to be able to match him. He gets that happens all the time in the NFL.
It does. I don't know if that's the reason particularly. I think really Atlanta has got a lot of problems head to toe. I'm not going to be too surprised if Dan Quinn, or is it Dan Quinn or Gus Bradley? I always get those two confused, both Seattle defensive coordinators. Atlanta just looked like shit, if you ask me, and I was critical of that game because Matt Ryan looks terrible. He's not the same guy he was 4 or 5 years ago. Anyway, I don't want to get off on a tirade about Matt Ryan, but what I'm looking at, and we got to wrap it up here, but in going forward, I still want to answer some questions that were out here on the board. But let me ask you this: give me your quarterback start of the week. Do you have one?
Well, it's funny. I would just take a shot on him because you can do so much. If you look at what Josh McCown did to Baltimore last year, it will blow your mind.
You've already blown my mind by saying Josh McCown.
Yeah, I know, because here's the thing. He is the only guy this week that if he gets you at least 15 points, which he very, very well, because I'm not necessarily – this is the hard thing. We've only seen week 1, so I don't necessarily know what to expect. Like the Ravens, are they really a good defense again? Because they were horrible against the pass last year. And now all of a sudden they shut down Buffalo, and it looked like the old Ravens D, and one of their old.
Yeah, and I'm not buying it, but you are right. That's a very good point. That Baltimore against the pass was in the bottom 3 or 4 last year. That was a secondary that you knew week in and week out they were great to pick your receivers against.
So I don't remember then, or I don't recall, and again I'll have to look. But just in my initial, because then that adds Gary Barnidge to being viable where he wasn't before. And so he could then be your tight end to start this week. And when you start putting together the teams this week, and again, this is where the money gets involved, where you're going to spend all your money this week, is everyone, the matchups and who you want to start, they're so expensive, and then the guys that are cheap are such flyers. Like, do I really feel confident about Mike Wallace that he's back? He caught 3 passes.
He had a nice game, but back is a stretch.
Well, that's what I mean, though, but your choice is when you start putting these teams, at least I've found this week so far, is you're now looking at Victor Cruz and Mike Wallace and some of these guys as, are they going to be, they haven't shown me enough. 1 catch, a touchdown, and 50 yards is nothing. So it's kind of like, I don't want to put, I might do 10 lineups this week for the $25 pool. Which that's the one that's the most shot. Yeah, and I'll do 5 Josh McCowns because, like I said, he is $1,500, $2,000 cheaper than any other quarterback we're starting. Remember, they're going to be down on
$6,000 player.
And I'm not trying to have him win. If you look at Josh McCown, he's a serviceable quarterback.
Sure.
I know he can run the ball, so he could get me 20, 30 yards running. He's chopping at the bit because this guy always has 2 or 3 games out of him before he goes back to – he's not a 16-game quarterback.
Right. He's 3,200 points, $3,200 less than Drew Brees, who is your leader, going up against a Giants defense that I don't think is as bad as they were last year.
No, they're not at all. But I might then go a high-end guy and have to see. It's tough. Cam Newton is going to be one pissed-off gunslinger.
This is true.
And that means 2 rushing touchdowns, a passing touchdown, 330 yards.
Sure. It'd be a monster day for Cam.
So again, it's all about the matchups. I hate with quarterback. That's the one guy that I always go matchup-wise and worry about the cost. Everyone else, you always got to play a stud. You got to look for the stud matchup and go with that no matter what it costs, and then piece together those other 1 or 2 pieces. And that's the reason why I like FanDuel, because it's not hard to pick kickers and Ds and when you down to that point. You know, you save those for last, although I like this week the defense that stands out, and it's a no-brainer, is Seattle. You know, so they're the most expensive, but it will matter. If San Francisco did that to L.A., look what Seattle's going to do to them at home. You know?
Give me a sleeper wide receiver, and then we're going to get to a little stardom, sit him, and some regular stuff here.
Oh, gosh. Sleeper wide receiver. Are we talking on the
I'm talking FanDuel sleeper wideouts. I
think, like I mentioned Victor Cruz. I am playing him in a few. I think that New Orleans could be obviously have some points put on him. So I think he could do good. I really like that. Gosh, I mean that's probably one of them. I think who could do also well is Deshaun Jackson.
Okay.
He looked pretty good, and I think.
And one more if you got him in mind.
Gosh, I would have to say maybe Michael Floyd.
Okay.
Maybe Michael Floyd. I think he underperformed last week.
He sure did.
I think the Bucs can be thrown on. I think they're going to put their attention to Larry Fitzgerald, but Fitzgerald's more of like a possession receiver that's getting looks. So I like what he does, but I think he's going to fizzle out, and you're going to see Floyd. Floyd's the big boy that gets open and can move, and him being the number 2 on the team, I like what he would do.
Okay, I'm going to throw a couple out there. And this is my homer call of the week. I'm usually good for one of these, but I like Michael Crabtree. I loved Michael Crabtree last week against New Orleans. I really thought you would see more out of him, but he was targeted inside the red zone about 3 times. There was the potential for 3 touchdowns right there. He really had great potential last week. He just gets open, and getting him one-on-one is it's impressive because they're going to give Amari Cooper a lot of the attention. Inside the 20, the attention's going to Cooper, and it's going to Clive Walford. So I like Crabtree, but there's another guy out there that I really like, and he was one of my bold predictions for the season, that Terrell Pryor is going to have a pretty decent season in Cleveland. Not a great season. I'm not going to say great, but I am going to say a decent season, decent enough for him to possibly solidify himself as a big number 2 wide receiver in the NFL.
I agree. I think he's already made
says a lot. Says a lot coming from a guy who is a college quarterback and not a great quarterback, not somebody who could be a quarterback in the NFL under any circumstance. In Oakland that year, it was hard to watch because he couldn't do a lot of things. As a wide receiver, he can contribute well. So I'm glad to see that. Do you have an upset as far as games go this week? Is there a team you look that would possibly you want to fade this team just because you might see a dud coming? I got one.
Let me add real quick. I do have one more wide receiver. I like Allen Hurns against San Diego. They gave up a lot of yards, and he led the team in targets and receptions and yards, if I'm not mistaken. The guy's a stud, and I think by the end of this year, people are going to take Jacksonville's offense a lot more seriously than they do. I know people are aware of Allen Robinson and Allen Hurns for that matter, but I don't think they really take them as legitimate people that you want on your team, and I think Allen Hurns, especially this week, is going to show you.
Very cool.
As far as upsets go, I think Minnesota possibly could beat Green Bay with that defense because it's in Minnesota. I wouldn't say that if it was at Lambeau Field, but I think you're going to see a completely different game. I think.
This is in the new stadium in Minnesota. I think this is their home opener there for the new stadium.
Right, exactly. And,
a lot of emotion. I like it.
Yeah, I think that Green Bay kind of showed. I mean, not taking anything away from Green Bay, they're a great team, but I don't think Jacksonville's defense is as good as Minnesota's by any means.
Probably
not. If that
not.
was that close to the game, and if they can establish the running game with Adrian Peterson and control the tempo, get a few completions from Stephon Diggs, they can definitely control the overall tempo and then obviously win the game, I think.
All right, so Harper,
I
Mike.
think their defense is a lot better than Green Bay's defense.
Harbor Mike gets his upset special in, and it's Minnesota over Green Bay. And every guest that we have come in, I like to get an upset special pick and just see what we got next week when we do the recap. Mike, I thank you very much for joining me tonight, man. It's a lot of fun. We're going to cut it off here in a few, but if you don't mind hanging with me just for a minute, I want to answer a couple questions that were submitted on the message board and via Twitter. Good. And we got some great listeners out there. One of our favorites, Heidi, she's always tuned in. She's always sharing us on Twitter or retweeting and spreading the word. I always enjoy having communications with her. She's a great listener and a great friend of the show. So, Heidi, you asked a couple questions. One regarding Philip Dorsett. I had asked Mike a minute ago about a team to fade because you really wanted to avoid anything there. I think that this week, unfortunately, Indianapolis may be a team to avoid, especially the receiving core. They're traveling to Denver. I don't want to see what a young Philip Dorsett can do against Aqib Talib or what's the other corner's name? Chris. Help me out. What's his name?
Oh, you're talking to me?
Yeah, sure was. You're
I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
I
and Chris on the other.
I'm not sure of the name of the other guy, to be honest.
Yeah, I drew a blank there. But yeah, to answer Heidi's question, I'm going to go with no. Don't get your fill. Don't start Philip Dorsett. If you have better options, please do that. There's just no sense in Philip Dorsett. Although I think home games on turf, fast track, he's going to be pretty formidable in Indianapolis. Andrew Luck seems to be healthy. He really slung the ball around pretty well despite the reports of some shoulder soreness. But the other question that was brought up on here too.
You were talking about Chris Harris Jr., by the way.
Thank you, Chris Harris. It was Chris something. I don't know why I kept wanting to say Chris Jackson, but I knew I was wrong. So Chris Harris, yeah, no start on Philip Dorsett. The other question regarding this too, Andrew Luck or Blake Bortles? Andrew Luck versus Denver or Bortles versus the Chargers? The only thing I don't like about Bortles is he is traveling to San Diego, but that's a San Diego team that I think is going to be a little shocked. The loss of Keenan Allen kills that team. They melted when he left.
Exactly.
Yeah, emotionally, it wasn't good for the team. It's not good for Phillip Rivers. So I think Jacksonville goes on the road and becomes 1-1 by beating the Chargers. As an AFC West Raider fan and a homer, I want to see San Diego lose all the time. Hopefully Blake will go out there and beat them. I tell a listener out there to go ahead and start Bortles over Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck, for one of those rare occasions this season, because you're going to want to start him all the time this season, but not this week against Denver.
Yeah, I would agree. That's one of the reasons why I'm high on Allen Hurns, for the same reason. You got to have some.
I like it. I do. I like it. I'm not starting. I wouldn't start Andrew Luck against Denver. And look, Cam played exceptionally well against Denver. Andrew Luck is very good. Andrew Luck is not Cam Newton.
I would not start any quarterback against Denver if I had the choice.
I would not. Let's see. Reading over some of these things. You guys are terrible, but I can't help but listen. Okay, thank you. We appreciate that, Steve in Colorado.
Hey, I'm the new guy, so hopefully I'm not that bad.
Yeah, go easy on our guests, Steve. Let's see here. Here's another question for you. Latavius Murray is the number 1 running back. Should be the 2 for this week or flex. Who do we want to start as your number 2? Okay, Latavius Murray, number 1. I don't mind Latavius Murray against Atlanta as your number 1. That's fine. But your number 2 and a flex, choosing from Duke Johnson, Ryan Matthews, Stephon Diggs, or Philip Dorsett. We've answered the Philip Dorsett question, so unless he's out of the question. I think right there, Ryan Matthews is your number 2 running back over Duke Johnson. Philadelphia may surprise some teams this year. They could win 6 games.
Yeah,
that's pretty good with a rookie quarterback. I think you win 6 games. It's a nice start. Rookie quarterback, rookie head coach, 6 victories. That's a nice start. You start Ryan Matthews as your number 2 and Stephon Diggs as your flex receiver.
Yeah, that would make sense. I would agree with that.
Yeah, and then our last question of the night here is Alex Smith. Okay, so guy has Tyrod Taylor. This is Anthony in Clearwater. He has Tyrod Taylor, standard scoring league, looking to see if Tyrod will recover or should he go with Rivers. He's leaning towards Rivers. Again, we talk about Tyrod Taylor. We talk about Thursday nights. Tyrod's playing Thursday. against a Jets defense who really beat up the Cincinnati Bengals. If you watched any of that game, it was physical. New York Jets had 7 sacks in that game. I don't know if you noticed that.